Hey everybody, welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. I'm your host, Hallie Dye. Today is a very special day to me. I'm usually your host. Today I'm not, because today is launch day. It's the day that my new book, You're Still a Good Mom, is available everywhere online that you would buy books. I cannot wait to share it with you. And so today, to commemorate the moment, Andrew is actually hosting, and we're diving into conversations. If you haven't heard of my book, the subtitle is Motherhood Surrendered to the One Who Never Fails, Even When You Feel You Have. It dives into topics such as grace, compassion, mom guilt, limitations, dreams, faithfulness as a mom, and I can't wait to share it. But today, Andrew is really interviewing me on the past 5 years in the making of this book. It's just an honest, vulnerable conversation. We laugh a lot. We tell a lot of what it looked like behind the scenes. I can't wait to share the conversation with you. But before we do, I want to tell you about a couple of partners for this episode. Speaking of Andrew recently had to get an x-ray, and he had this wonderful experience at Northeast Imaging. Everyone was kind, it was convenient and comfortable. If you don't know, Northeast Imaging is a patient-friendly diagnostic testing facility that is doctor trusted and patient preferred. They offer MRI, CT, X-ray, and ultrasound, and they have a friendly staff who is committed to focus on high-quality scans and intentional care to the patient. Plus, they're referring providers. It doesn't matter if you're using your health insurance or you're paying cash, Northeast Imaging is almost always more affordable than local hospitals. The facility is conveniently located at 1703 Lemmy Lane in Monroe. They're open from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., so tell your healthcare provider you want to go to Northeast Imaging. It is officially springtime, which means recital practices, baseball games, and the likes. Without as much time to cook or get snacks from home, Daily Press is here to help. Daily Press has fast and friendly service for your busy schedule with their made-to-order deli options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for the busiest, craziest days, their fresh grab-and-go options in the open-air cooler and hot-to-go box. What you might not know is that they even have a wide variety of frozen take-home meals and appetizers. We can't forget all the baked good options and the fresh brewed coffee. Daily Press has 4 locations, making it convenient for you and your family, and are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at all but one location. Plus, it's a family-owned business, so stop by Daily Press today. And now to my conversation with Andrew.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. I'm not your host, Andrew Dye, and I'm here with your host, Hallie Dye, actually interviewing her today. And this is the day of her book launch. So we're really excited and going to kind of talk about this special day.
I know, it's wild. Really weird. Because it's not the day while we're recording this.
Yeah.
And I just can't really wrap my head around it, you know?
Yeah.
I've had people ask, does it feel so weird? And it does, but I'm still doing so much work on it marketing wise, behind the scenes. And so, and just some other things, not even book related. And so it does, but you can't really slow down to think about it. And the only way I know how to liken it to something is when people would say, can you believe you're not gonna have to take another test or study anymore, when you're about to graduate from college or grad school or whatever. And it is surreal, but you're still studying, you haven't graduated yet. And so it's not really set in until you're doing something else in the fall.
Yeah.
After you've had the nightmares for 5 years that you forgot to study.
Yeah. Forgot your locker combination. That's always mine. Mine's always, I don't know my locker combination.
I forgot my locker combination all the time, and I would just go to the office and be like,
I know.
I'm back.
That's my nightmare though.
Why?
I don't know why.
You can't just go ask?
It's either I've forgotten my locker combination or I've forgotten which locker's mine. Or I've forgotten that there's a test and I show up for a test.
Yeah.
And then I just leave.
That one I get, but the locker.
I don't know. Lockers.
Do you have a problem asking for help?
What do you think? Yeah. Well, I feel like that's been the story for this entire book experience is hard to wrap your head around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just from the get-go.
Yep.
But I did want to start off. So normally y'all, whenever you interview somebody, you say, who is that person? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So in the spirit of that, I'm going to ask you, who is a good mom?
Oh, goodness. A good mom is not a mom that never fails or falls short or gets everything right, knows how to do everything, can do all the things well. a good mom is someone who is faithful and turns back to the Lord day after day after day. I think sometimes we have this concept that um, as we walk with the Lord and as we, especially when we're learning lessons in specific areas like motherhood, that we're going to wake up one day and we should have built this patience in and of ourselves, but that's a fruit of the Spirit. Like you're never going to have that on your own. And so there can be this disappointment that you're not producing that in the face of whatever circumstances you meet that day. But that's always supposed to come from the Lord. And so it's a good mom is one who faithfully follows the Lord and turns back as many times as she needs to.
That's good. Because I think a lot of moms and dads feel like they're not good moms and dads a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you were always so kind when I was writing it. Because actually, the book wasn't named until, probably like 9 months ago or something.
That's true.
Maybe
it's weird because like we've been talking about it with the new title for so long that it's like it's always been that way.
Right. But no, I called it The Unfailing Mom Forever, thinking someone might pick that up like in the mindset of that's what I want to be, and then realizing like, oh, this is really a story of surrender. Because that isn't possible. But when I signed with Moody, they gave me the option, but they renamed it You're Still a Good Mom. And I was like, yes, that is it. But in the writing of it and just in the living of the last, 5+ years is when I would ask you, like, am I a good mom? Like you were always kind to remind me, like, you're asking that question, which means that you care, And so I would say that to any parent that's like,
that's right.
Am I doing enough? You care.
Yeah. It was one of those deals. It's like, if you're buying parenting books, you're probably going to be a good parent, even if you don't read the books.
There's probably a correlation in there.
Probably so. So I've had the distinct privilege.
So that's why you should buy it.
Yeah, everyone should buy it. We're going to say that like 100 times on this episode.
It's not.
It's good for dads too.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I had the distinct privilege of being able to see all of this develop behind the scenes, like not only see the Lord work through it and provide a path like to the book, but also to see you and your ups and downs and your struggles and your courage and faithfulness and that sort of thing. So I preface saying that because we'll talk about that a lot more as we go on. But what led you to write the book?
I have an answer, but my first honest answer is I don't really know. Never in my life. I've always liked to write, that, like I like to journal. I'm an external processor. Bless you. I externally process things to you a lot.
And I'm an internal processor. So it kind of works. Like 2 external processors would be like,
sometimes
you never get anything done.
Yeah. Sometimes it does. It does take learning, but but all that to say, like, never did I think I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna be a writer. I'm gonna be an author. And so I've battled a lot of imposter syndrome because of that. But I don't know. I think jobs like podcast hosts and authors, like speakers, we think that someone comes to you and it's like, we'd like you to be.
Yeah. You look like a writer.
We'd like you to do this job. And that's not really true. It's something that you become as you hone these things that you feel led to do in small ways. And so there is a lot of imposter syndrome that you battle, which I think is a large part of the Christian faith, because you're called to do crazy, impossible things, and you know that it's not possible in and of you. But as far as what led me to write this specific book, when people ask, like, who is this book for? I'm like, it's for me. Like, I didn't write this book because I figured it out. And that has been scary about launching it. It's like, I don't have all of this down, like.
Well, and even when you were starting it,
yeah,
we had what's the math? A 4-year-old and a
4-year-old,
2-year-old,
2 or 3, and then 1. So I think she was still 2.
So you're in the middle of it, and really kind of journaling and thinking through these things. So
yes, and like needing to know the answer. And this is what's so crazy is it's called You're Still a Good Mom, but I didn't really know the question that I was asking the whole time is, what is a good mom? like, what is enough? Am I enough? What is my worth? And so, but I do distinctly remember one long day. I don't remember what happened that day. I don't remember if I just like felt just impatient all day, if I lost my patience with kids. I don't remember. It was just a long, hard day where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was in 2020, so shelter in place with 3 kids. You can't go anywhere. I'm staying home, and so just a lot. But I remember sitting on our bed after the kids went down and just opening up my phone in the notes section and just typing out words to another mom. It started with dear mom or dear mama, I don't remember. And like typing a letter, like basically saying, I see you. And I was really like, it was words I needed to hear because you just, some of those days in motherhood, whether it's parenting teens or, you know, just the constant caretaking of the younger years, that just feels really unseen. It feels like you don't really know if anything they're doing is amounting. You don't know if you're enough. There's a lot of layers to that. But it really was a letter I needed to hear. And at the end of it, it's just funny that I even had this thought, but I was like, you know, this could be the beginning of a book. Had no clue in the world. And but it's the intro to my book, and it's been edited a lot and it's changed a lot, but that's where it started.
Really cool. And it started, you didn't have an office or a studio or anything like that. So you
I don't even know if I had a laptop that I was using.
No, you didn't. You had a typewriter. You had a 1930s typewriter. I don't know what you were writing it on paper.
Yeah.
But it was cool. Just the memories. And like when we were talking through, when you asked me to do this, I'm like thinking back, because it's like you forget, you know, 5 years ago, and then just over the course of time, and a lot of life has happened. But Dad came over and made your office.
Yes, it's our coat closet.
It's our coat closet, which we don't have a lot of storage, so we sacrificed a coat closet for your office. You know, but it was cool. He came in and you know, put the shelves in and painted it, and
I put some wallpaper in the back and got some office stuff. And it is actually a coat closet, so you can't like get in it and close the door behind you. We like to call it Narnia. So I would escape into there. And
you had to buy the right chair so you could like, it would fit under there and you could close the door.
It's like a wedding chair that I found on a random website. You can buy them in bulk. But I was like, I just need the one.
Yes. But what's cool, so you did that and you had the wallpaper, and then you covered it in ideas and verses that would encourage you, and just with little sticky notes. Like the whole thing was covered in sticky notes. So now we still find sticky notes. It's like a little
in our coats.
Yeah. Because now it's back to a coat closet. There's no hangers or anything. The kids just throw their coats on the desk. So
Lindsay's skin is crawling because she is type A and I am type B.
There. But it's like little fortune cookies, you know. You just never know, like your coat, what kind of like a little Dove chocolate. It's got a little positive thing to say.
It really is. And the best,
sometimes they're tailored to women, but like they encourage me just the same.
I'm crying. The worst was recently I was speaking at a church, and I was just like, I get really nervous, and like I'm not generally an anxious person, but I am when I'm speaking. And so get out a coat that I haven't seen since last year and found one, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a word from the Lord. It was that verse. Remember, if the world hates you, it hated me first. Okay,
oh,
cheers.
Thank you. Which in a weird way is actually super encouraging going into a speaking engagement. So, but sometimes you'll have one like stuck on the back of you, and like you didn't realize it, but you've been to a business meeting, and
you know what? Those businessmen needed to hear that.
Yeah.
You're still a good mom.
Still a good mom.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to hear it. So you mentioned imposter syndrome, and that is something that we've had a lot of conversations about.
Yeah.
Tell us about how the imposter syndrome affected you kind of in the early stages. Tell us what imposter syndrome is.
It still affects me. But
I know. We're going to get there too.
In the early stages, like think about it. All of a sudden, like I mean, I even felt crazy for your dad to make that coat closet an office. I was like, this is so, like, he's wasting his time and money on me. Like, I'm not a writer, like
Mhm.
all of those small things. And you don't even like consciously realize you think that way. But at some point you bought me a laptop and I was like, it's a waste of money. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't like fathom
Well, it's
the
weird.
investment in something that didn't make any sense to me at the time.
Yeah, and it was always weird, like, you wouldn't call yourself a writer
Yeah.
because you always thought, "Well, I don't have a book, so how do I
Right.
call myself a writer?" So,
Yeah.
you would call yourself a wannabe writer,
Yeah.
or something like that to kind of avoid
Yeah.
the imposter
And I
syndrome,
don't regret that. I think that was a good way for me to combat that. Like, I think my bio on social media forever said a wannabe
Mhm.
writer and Christian speaker. And I think that was sort of my way of combating imposter syndrome because it was like, this is what I want. I'm not
Yeah,
calling myself, but
yeah.
this is what you see me going for, which is really brave because we've talked
Oh,
about that
man.
definition of shame of like people see you go for something or wanting something and then people see you not get it.
Yeah.
And um but like there was a lot wrapped up in all. So there was imposter syndrome about writing, and I will say writing groups, taking writing classes, and those sort of things that felt ridiculous to spend money on,
Mhm.
were really really crucial for me. So I did Hope Writers, I did Compel, um, took a Bob Goff write author course or writing course. I can't
Forgot
remember
about
now.
that.
And all of those things were really encouraging to me. Like I can still remember specific quotes that made it on the sticky notes, that made it on
Mhm. Yeah.
the coat fortune cookies, and they kept me going. Like I think one of them, this might have been from the Bob Goff, was like, if a story um, is true, it will like get to the people it was meant
Mm.
to have it, or something like that. I mean, it was a better quote than that, but like, and I was just like, okay, like, well, I just have to follow the Lord and write truth, and
Mhm.
He will make it what it needs to be. So just starting to seek Him in the outcome of like that's not mine to
Mm.
hold, and so a lot of things like that. But I know like even, I mean, so this is what would lead me to quit the book many times. Was if I had a really bad day in motherhood
Mm.
where I did lose my cool, or I just didn't like had a week where I was just not loving it, like I had postpartum or whatever. um it it would just feel like, well, I can't write this,
Mhm.
like
How could I
because
be the one to write this?
yes, like, and that imposter syndrome was also wrapped up in there. And so at some point I was going to counseling,
Mhm.
processing feelings from motherhood and feeling very much like an imposter because I'm writing this book on motherhood.
Going to counseling for
Yes.
motherhood.
Yes. And it used to terrify me of like, because my plan was to self publish. I just never felt led to like build a platform.
Mhm.
Platforms are great. I do believe like many times they're God given. So it's not anything negative, but I just didn't feel led to focus on building
Mhm.
that. Like that didn't feel like a healthy focus for me. And so knowing that I wasn't going to go for that, like it just kind of felt like, okay, well, self-publishing is the way
Mm.
that I'm going to go. And like it would terrify me because I would be like, I'm going to launch this book, and what if one of the 10 people that reads it like sees me at Target
Yeah.
struggling with motherhood? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just was like,
Now you gotta
how?
be the perfect mom.
Yes,
Yeah.
and like
Which is totally anti what your book is.
right.
Yeah.
So, but however, like in writing this book
Mhm.
and writing what was true and digging through scripture and prayer and writing it, going away, coming back and reading it, refining it, editing, all of those
Mhm.
things, these messages have shaped my life. And that doesn't scare me
Mhm.
anymore because I know that truth
Yeah.
deep down. Like I know that it's a part of me,
Yeah.
and do I have moments of fears and doubts? Yes, but like not anything like in those early
Mhm.
days.
And really the message of the book is really the message of the gospel
Mm-hmm. It is.
because you can't do it yourself. You
Yeah.
couldn't do it yourself. You're not righteous. You're
Mm-hmm.
not perfect, but there's somebody that is.
Yeah.
How do you feel like your faith, let's say in the first part. So from feeling led to write,
Mm-hmm.
kind of starting the writing until getting the book deal. How do you think your faith was developed during that time?
Mm. You know, um, this isn't a part of the book in any way. However, a large part of imposter syndrome and of those feelings that we were talking about is how you feel that the world sees you, or how a belief you hold about yourself, or a belief you feel like you need to defend about yourself, or there's a lot of different ways you can take that. And I tasted the depths of feeling misunderstood a lot in the last 5 years in different ways, and some of them publicly. And like that was really, really hard to keep going. Um, but I think like praying, okay, Lord, like praying for that refining, praying for him to search my heart, praying like if I went to the coffee shop and wrote on the way home being like, if that was not of you, if this is not what you want to be in the book, like just forget it, because you do have to. I will say, if you're taking writing seriously, you do have to just go and do it, like whether you feel like you have something to say or not, because you can't just wait for inspiration all the time,
Yeah.
especially if you're dependent on things like childcare and schedule and stuff. um and so I would go and write, and on the way home just pray like, okay, if this is not of you, if that's not what you want, like
Mm.
lead me in a different way. But I mean, for years I have prayed, if this book is not going to glorify you, if it's going to be about me at all, and combating some of those things that I felt misunderstood in, um, I would just pray, like, don't let it go out. I mean, do not let it go out. I don't care if I've said this is what I want publicly. Like, I want your will more than I want
Yeah.
my pride or my reputation or how I'm understood by anyone. And so I think over time, really focusing on that and meditating on that, praying that, and then by the time, of course, the way everything happened, signing the book and how it really shouldn't have happened.
We'll
I
get
mean,
into that.
totally God thing. I've had the peace of, I know that I know that I know, no matter what anyone says or thinks or feels, that the Lord has a plan for this book. And
That's
so
right.
I rest in that.
And you know that you're not perfect. You know that you're going to
Absolutely.
fail, and you're going to point back to Him. And that's why I brought up the faith thing, because watching your journey through this and watching your faith develop, and you articulating that just now, like it reminds me of that verse in James that's consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, you encounter trials of many kinds,
Mm.
knowing that the testing of your faith will develop the perseverance. And like we've talked about this before, but that word perseverance is really endurance, and it's this idea of you're really getting used to this weight that's on your shoulders. It's I think we have to look it up. I'm not a Greek scholar, but it means to be under it, to remain under it. And like I've seen you, it's almost like a weightlifter, and we can say that because we go to the gym now.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
for the past couple of weeks.
No imposter syndrome about that.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like you're getting stronger. Like I've seen your faith develop through the process, through the trials, and there were some trials, and
Yeah.
and the way that you handled it and responded, going back to the Father and seeking wisdom and counseling and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that testing of the faith that was the word whenever they would refine silver, and they would put all that silver in those vats or whatever. And then whenever they'd heat it up, they would skim off the impurities and that sort of thing. And like I have seen your faith develop in that way. And it's been really neat to watch you, because there's things now that you handle a totally different way than you would have 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And as believers, that's where we all should be moving toward.
Right.
But it's been really neat to watch you do that.
Thank you.
So,
well, and I'll say too, like, you know, I think sometimes, like, because I've had a couple of interviews for the book, and we've we've addressed imposter syndrome in those, and like this is how it was, and it isn't that now I feel more equipped and I feel more
yeah.
like an author and I've gotten all this down. It's not that I'm any more equipped or skilled in any of those things. It's that he's shifted my desires and my gaze towards eternity and running this race with endurance, and
That's right.
casting off all those things that so easily encumber us. Like, I don't have time. I don't have time to worry about those things anymore. It's not
Yeah.
that I'm any more equipped today. It's that I'm like, no, like this, we're doing his
Yeah.
work. It's not about me. And it's that Tim Keller book, The Freedom of Self
Hmm.
Forgetfulness. It's like you
Yeah.
don't have time to think about yourself
Yeah.
when you're doing his work. And so there's a lot of that.
That's true. And I feel like imposter syndrome can be kind of like an onion on Shrek. Like it can have a lot
For
of
sure.
layers
Yeah.
because the imposter syndrome in the early stages
Mhm.
of writing, it was like, hey, I'm stepping out there and I'm being a writer, and like, what if it doesn't happen? And I've
Mhm.
boldly stated that this is what I'm working on, and people are
Mhm.
helping me and investing their time in me,
Yeah.
and so there's imposter syndrome there, but also, later on, and we'll get into this a little bit, the imposter syndrome has been like, wow, Lord, you have prepared this way for me in this book, and
Mhm.
I want to glorify you, but like I'm struggling to, I feel like an imposter because I don't feel worthy enough to be doing that.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and to me, if you don't have a little bit of that imposter syndrome when you're doing
Mhm.
work for the Lord and don't feel worthy, then that may be a bad thing. So it's like imposter syndrome flows different ways, but
Yes.
just interesting. And we'll get into that a little bit more,
Yeah.
kind of moving into the next part, because I didn't know if you had told the story of how you got your book deal on the podcast yet.
I have on one podcast, but it hasn't aired yet. So the very first Abide conference that the Vine puts on, Bethany Wilson was our very first episode. That's how kind of the Saltworks got started, honestly, which we talk about on episode 50. And then, of course, episode 1 for anybody that wants that backstory. It's really good. And the Vine story is very good. But at the very first Abide conference, Bethany asked me if I would host um, the speaker Trillia Newbell, and they already had arrangements for a hotel and that sort of thing, but just pick her up from the airport, make sure she has transportation, like coordinate meals and stuff, you know, hang backstage, kind of know what songs are in order so you know when we need to go out there, whatever, all of those things. And I was like, I'll sure, like I'll do whatever you need me to do. And when she asked, I was like, I mean, I'll do whatever
Hmm.
the Vine needs. And so, but I also had COVID like the week before, and so I was not contagious anymore, but I had like COVID brain, which I get so bad with COVID and the flu. And so I was like, man, can I even have like small talk? Can I even have conversation? How you can feel. And I'm like, man. And so pick her up from the airport. She's wonderful. She's written many books, and they're great. And so, but I pick her up from the airport, and we just start talking, and I'm asking her about her job, and she brings up, well, Bethany tells me that you teach life group, because we did at the time.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, we do, yeah. And so she's asking questions, and I'll answer a couple, and then I'm like, well, how's your flight? Like I'm trying to
Yeah.
turn the like questions back to her. Um, and so we had a couple of meals together, like over that weekend. And at breakfast, the morning she left, she was asking questions about the podcast and asking questions about the book because, side note, Bethany had told her that I had
But
written a book.
but also, like, am I remembering it right? Like, you had shelved that book. We we
Hmm.
all- we we had stopped talking about that book for,
So I finished the first manuscript in 2021.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and we celebrated
Yep,
as a family,
we did.
and then like basically it was shelved and life kind of went on.
Hmm. Well, we homeschooled for a little while. We felt called to do that, and then I worked for another ministry, um, full time for a little while, and so it just was like, in all of that, I was like, if the book's meant to come out, like it will.
Yeah,
That just
but it wasn't on your radar as far as when Julia
it
was.
wasn't. Yeah, no, it wasn't. You're right. The podcast was
Oh
because we were
yeah,
about to go into season 2, but the book really
right.
wasn't. And I really was honestly praying in that time, like, do you even have plans for this book, or was this book like a testing for my faith?
Yeah,
Like, did
right.
you call me to write it for me to develop this endurance and trust
Hmm.
and faith? And so I was kind of like thinking of it that way a little bit, but also praying, like, what do you want me to do with this? And worrying a little bit, am I even going to still feel the same way? Because I'm not in that same season.
So true.
which, by the way, when I read it now, I still cry.
That's
So
cool.
I
Well,
think,
and you think too, like you talked about how, writers, you write a lot, like you write
hmm
and kind of become a
hmm
writer. I'm sure every writer that's ever written a book is like, I'm not that same writer. Like I've developed
yes,
this skill. So it's kind of tough to look back 2 years prior and be like, hey, is
that
this a
is
book?
why I have to know that it was the Lord, because may it be so that 10 years down the road, I say,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have said it that way, or
Mm.
oh, this is. But one of the things I think, again, the Bob Goff writing course that he said was you have to have a freshman book to have a sophomore book.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay. Of course, I think of this book as my baby, now that it's launching into the
Yeah.
world today. But like, it's still like my freshman book, hopefully,
Yeah.
But giving that over to the Lord, that He can still use B plus work,
That's right.
like He can use anything. But so she brings up the book, which I had not mentioned. Bethany had told her. And so I'm like, yeah, this is kind of what I'm calling it. And at the time it was Unfailing Mom, Motherhood Surrendered to the One Who Never Fails. And she was like, well, I like that tagline, which we've kept.
Mhm.
And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, it's not, a parenting book. And so I'm kind of asking questions, and she's asking more and more until eventually she's like, um, well, give me an example of a chapter. And so I did. And at the end, I was tearing up. I think she was tearing up too. Like, and I was like, well, sorry, didn't mean to go that into depth. But it was chapter 3, which is really emotional. And so we kind of had that conversation. And at this point, we're getting out of the car at the event. We're there for, she had a book signing that morning early. And she said, well, I am the acquisitions director for Moody Publishers. I don't know if you'd want to meet and Zoom about this. And I had no
So cool.
idea. Like, that was not on my radar at all. And I was like, okay, like, and she was like, I mean, I can't, guarantee anything. And we get inside, and again, I'm still have COVID brain, and I'm kind of like processing what just happened, and also was trying to respectfully give her some silence to look over her notes, because she's speaking again this morning, and I know I get really nervous. So um she was like kind of talking and stuff, but I'm trying to be quiet because I don't want to distract her from
Mhm.
reading over stuff. And she was like, are you doing okay? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm doing good. I just still kind of have drainage or whatever. And she it's like, okay. And then a few minutes later, she's like, you sure you're okay? Like, your spirit seems kind of down, And I
You're like,
was
leave me
like,
alone. Stop it.
and honestly, like, I haven't had time to like even process what I'm feeling. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I think I just like, I don't want you to feel like I drove you this weekend or went to breakfast this morning so that
Mhm.
you would read my book,
Yeah.
And she said, oh, well, that's what I do. So that, I love my job. Like, this is my job, and it's my job to find, you know
Uh-huh.
these connections. And she was like, you gotta lay that down, And she was actually the one that told me to read Tim Keller's Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness. So
Which really cool story. And there's so many little God stories that Hallie's skipping over
I just don't
that
remember.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna go
jump
back
in.
that
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and touch on. But what was cool was she was like,
Forgotten so much of myself, but yeah,
yeah.
I'm skipping over.
But Trulia was like, told Hallie that she needed to look that book up.
Mm-hmm.
And then she got home and I had just ordered it because
Yes.
Tim Keller had recently passed away at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And so I was like going through, I'm like, man, I want to read something that I haven't read before.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Hallie got home, it was sitting there on the counter.
Yeah.
And she like texted a picture of Trulia and was like, this book? Is this the one? She's like, that's the one. So just really
That's
cool.
wild. Yeah.
But also just the cool, like, I love the little parts. Like,
Yeah.
the reason y'all went to breakfast and she was asking about your book was because the hotel that she was staying in, the kitchen
Yeah.
had
She
like
was just
shut
gonna
down.
do she was trying to be not high maintenance because she's a morning person, and wanted to eat something before she spoke and stuff. And she was like, I'll just eat at the hotel. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I don't mind at all. Our kids are up really early, so like,
Oh yeah.
it's to this day they're up really early. And so I was like, it's not a problem at all. And But she was like, "No, I'm good." Well, I'm helping her carry her bags in and stuff. And so the kitchen, they said that the kitchen's having problems. We're like,
Yes. You're like,
I don't know
no
what that
thanks.
means,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna pick you up in the morning for
Yes. Delta
breakfast.
biscuit it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. But just so cool. And like the fact that Bethany would have it in her heart to ask you, I'm
She's so
assuming because
bad.
the luxurious minivan that you were driving,
I mean,
nothing says,
no one else has
transports.
one quite like it.
Yeah. Haters gonna hate,
Yeah.
but
Still driving that
it's pure
minivan
luxury.
today.
Yeah.
So,
But just so cool, like the whole thing. And I have been able to watch it and I'm
mhm.
thankful. Um, but just cool. And then you submitted and you had a whole book to submit. I
Well,
think
so then I had to go do we met on Zoom, and then I had to do the book proposal process. So most people, when they have a book idea and they want to go through traditional publishing, you really should have some sort of platform, whether it's social media or extensive email list or, something like that. And so that's why I just never thought of myself as a candidate, and
Mhm.
and I had done other things like applied to certain programs, so I'd heard plenty of no's,
Yeah.
but just had not done the book proposal process. But you're really supposed to do that, and it's a very extensive
Mhm.
document, like answering questions about the book, researching other books that are like it on the market, and how yours is different,
Mhm.
and what it will bring the reader and that sort of thing. But really, most of the time when you do that, you have not written the actual book. You have an idea and you have a couple of sample chapters that you
Gotcha.
submit with it. And so that was like I did things backwards
Mhm.
just because
Didn't know
that
anybody.
didn't
Didn't know
know.
no better.
And yeah, um, that's just the way I do things. So but it was also nerve wracking because it was like, what chapters do I send?
Mhm. Oh, that's true.
And what was so scary, like in the book proposal, you also have to say, like, when do you think you can be done with this manuscript? When, how many words and all these things. And so when you sign the book deal, you like have to hit in a certain amount of
Yeah.
like words and stuff like that in a certain percentage. Um, but so I submitted it, absolutely did not think anything was going to come of it. She was going to present it to her team, but like that still wasn't a guarantee. And so when she called me and said like, okay, yes, like we want to sign with you for this book, and had a lot of really kind encouraging things to say, um, and it was crazy. I got off the phone, and like then all my friends wanted to
Uh-huh.
celebrate, and then the imposter syndrome set in again of
Yes.
like, I think Moody might call me and be like, just kidding,
Yes.
like we were joking.
Yes.
And so I was like, I can't, like, my stress was so high. I was like, I can't.
Yes.
And then,
Tell them about how you got the call from Shelia though.
what?
She called Bethany.
Oh, yeah. So she accidentally called Bethany because, like, she had mixed up our, I wasn't going to call her out on the podcast,
Well,
um, but she accidentally called Bethany, because, like she just, I think, got our numbers confused, like from the
mhm.
weekend or whatever. And so she starts telling her, and Bethany's like, wait, I have not written a book.
I mean, I could.
Yeah. And she was like, oh my gosh, don't
Don't
say
say
anything.
anything.
So she gets off the phone, calls me.
So
Well,
Bethany knew. Bethany's like, "Oh my gosh," freaking
yes,
out.
Bethany knows before me. So, and my friend Heather, our neighbor, was at the house and the kids. And so she's actually like, I've got the kids, you go take this call.
Yes.
So I step outside and I'm like, oh my goodness, like so surreal. When I come back in, Heather and Bethany are there because
Yes.
Bethany
Bethany
left
came
work
over.
to come.
Yeah.
Yes, which is really funny.
How cool.
Yeah, but that's hilarious.
So I get there and like all Hallie's friends are there,
Yeah.
knowing, and I'm just like, "What are we excited about?" But I saw you go through like so many levels of feeling like
Yeah.
an imposter, feeling that I'm not worthy. Like we would celebrate and you couldn't
Mhm.
really celebrate, or your friends would call and they'd be like, "I'm so excited for you," and you'd be like, "I'm excited too," and you'd hang and be like, "I don't know," like it's emotionally, I don't. I am like head wise, like you understand it, but
You're
heart wise,
calling me out today.
I am. But heart wise, it was like it was a struggle for you,
Yeah,
and
it
like
still
it
is.
still is. But I just, even you remember where we were whenever you got the contract and stuff?
Yes, we went to Need to Breathe and Judah and the Lion
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah. So super cool. We got that and
Mhm.
like signed that in the hotel and before
Mhm.
we came home. But even then, like driving home, it's like there's moments of like such excitement and like,
Mhm.
Lord, you know, thank you so much. And
Mhm.
just want to like do your will, but
Yeah.
then there were also these down times of,
Mhm.
I just don't feel worthy, or what if this is
Not
not a
real.
done deal, or
Yeah.
yeah. And even like later on, what if it's not, nobody needs it?
Mhm.
But what's been really cool is, people that know about the book or that have read a chapter or something like
Mhm.
that, like the encouragement that the Lord has graciously given you through other people of being like, this really meant something to me. And
Mhm.
and if it's like, if it was even just for one person and the Lord
Absolutely.
was using it for one person, or
Yeah.
just for you, or just for me or Lindsay, like it's
Mhm.
just worth it. But
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean for sure. I think that's why like I'm excited about the launch because it's done and like I
yeah.
do want to commemorate, but it's also like there's still a lot of marketing that I have to do like
Hmm.
into like May, like I won't be done for a while. And
Hmm.
so it does feel like we're launching it, but it's kind of like I've been thinking a lot about how God commanded his people to, I think it was the festival of ingathering or something. It was like
Uh-huh.
the harvest festival, and they would celebrate and they would, all come together and stuff. And like it was a celebration, but there's a lot of work in the harvest. You
Yeah.
have to harvest everything,
Yeah.
you have to store everything appropriately. Like you have to allot, like, where are these crops going? Where's, like there's a lot of work in the harvest time. And so, like, I'm in a harvest season and it's wonderful. And so, I'm kind of learning, like, what does that look like to do the work well,
Mm.
but also celebrate? And, like, I don't have
Yeah.
an answer for that yet.
And also a full-time mom.
And full
And
time mom. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Mm.
but yeah. But, it's not dependent on me.
That's
Like
right.
the good news is he's going to do the work even if I'm not able to celebrate to the
Yeah.
way that I would like to. But
That's right.
and it might be 6 months that I'm having coffee and have a moment where I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that happened.
I
I
can
don't
believe
know,
that.
but he's just been so kind and so faithful in that thought of if one person needs this. I
Mm.
mean, that was my thing in finishing it was if one person needs this, why wouldn't I do this
Mm.
work?
Mm.
I mean, it was the same way the podcast started. If
Yeah.
I can do this, why wouldn't I? You know,
Yeah. Really cool.
I don't want to let Moody down for investing in this book,
Right.
but I'm also totally at peace with book
Mhm.
sales because the Lord's gonna put it into the places it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Really cool. I don't understand. It's so tough because like a book is so permanent.
Yes.
And that was a really good ending point that you just made. We could probably like stop the podcast there. But I'm like, I like beat up a text message before I send it to
You do.
somebody, especially if it's like, well, if it's business related or like
In fact,
faith.
I write some of your text messages.
Yeah, yeah, you're a writer. It's nice to have an in-house writer. But like, I beat them up like, and if it's theological or if it's
Mhm.
faith and somebody's having some questions, like I want it to be right,
Mhm.
you know. And you can send a text these days. You can just like delete it before
Mhm.
they read it, like you
Yeah.
can. And a text message, nothing like this, or a Facebook post or something
Mhm.
like that. Like sometimes you can beat those up. It's very courageous to put something in writing and have it out there
Well,
forever.
I will say, like, I think that's part of why it's hard to celebrate is because, like, it looks like you turned the manuscript in, you completed the
Hmm.
edit, you had all these deadlines, you're done, it's printed. But like really it's been the Wild West. Like they're so organized. Like Moody has been a wonderful, I cannot imagine another scenario. But for me, like I'll be like making edits in an email, like on a random Thursday, 3 months after edits were done, and
Yeah.
so it's like feels like the Wild West. So it isn't like once you've done this deadline, there's no more of that. Like it's been up until print,
Hmm.
basically. You can make changes. I've already found one typo, which I'm sure was my bad, there was supposed to be a strike through and something it's in the acknowledgments.
Yeah.
But,
I know what
like,
you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was to my mom. It was supposed to say, you're a good with a strike through and say the best mom. But
Yeah.
I was like, so many eyes have been on this book. I've had proofreaders outside of Moody. I've had editors inside Moody. Like,
Yeah.
all of these things, but like there is no perfect product,
Mm-hmm.
And I think like it is a very neat thing, and like I am proud of the product, and I'm so excited, and it is surreal in every way. And I can't like express the gratefulness for this book launching. But it's also like even the most official human systems are human systems. Like,
Oh yeah.
even like doctorate programs are made by humans.
Yeah.
And so like when you're like, yeah, it is, and like it is a big deal, but also like when your sight is set on eternity and we need to like my hope for this book, my prayer in this book in the
That's what I
last
was gonna
couple of
ask you.
weeks has been like, I want this book to help moms recognize the rest and freedom they can have, that their worth is truly in Christ alone, no matter what season they're in, because that changes your entire life. And if that changes your life, that can change children's lives. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited about things that I won't ever see or know,
Yeah.
that I hope this book can do. And like,
From like infant children to adult children.
yes, like, I mean, and so like that is what I wanted to do. And like a typo is not going to stop that, and it just, it's like when you have these like deep goals that are for the gospel to spread and change families, and like I obviously this book won't do that. The Lord will do that, but I like what a neat thing. I pray that this will be a tool
Yeah.
in that way, because I feel like that's been the impact in my life. And so like when my sight is set on that, I don't have time to worry about like, was this the right way to do that? Was that the proper etiquette? Was this
Right.
grammatically correct? Like I don't.
Which I think were things that would have deeply bothered you 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And I still have my
No,
moments.
no, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But I remember, so your prayer really for like the experience writing this book and walking that road had become, Lord, open doors that you want open, or closed doors that you don't want us to walk through, because a good closed door is better than an open door sometimes,
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And he did.
he did.
And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful, not because those doors were the wrong doors in my mind, but because the book would not be this product. Like
Yeah.
without my editor, Ashley Slater, without Trilia's, wisdom in the process, and a prayer that she prayed over me of the Lord, like for the Lord to lead my hands in every single facet of this process. Um, like all kinds of things. The title would be different. Some of the chapters would be different. And I'm so grateful that all the doors prior to this closed, because it was supposed to be this way.
That's right.
And I've been able to rest, not because I'm like, wow, this is this great product, which I do think it is, but I'm able to rest not in that, but that the Lord had a plan. And like in praying that Trilia prayed for me at the very beginning of this, when I was very much fighting imposter syndrome.
Tell us what that prayer was.
Yeah, I mean, she just prayed. It was a meeting with just me and her. It was after I got the phone call and we were doing this, and it was like I got this author packet of all the things that the next year were going to entail. And it was like, oh my goodness, what if I've fooled them and this is really not a good book, and they're going to be disappointed in their choice? And what if this doesn't have anything to say? What if this is not what the Lord wants me, all of these things. And so I'm having imposter syndrome. I have a lot of fears and doubts. And was sitting in this meeting. It was just me and her over Zoom, and she prayed that the Lord would guide my hands in every single facet of this process. And like the peace that came with me learning to pray that in every single process, was in every single edit and every single everything, I was like, thank goodness for all of these edits from my editor, because the Lord was in that, like it was not me fighting for the wording I wanted or even the content. It was he's guiding through all of these people that are praying and caring about this book. I mean, that was such a blessing to me. I know sometimes editing can be nerve-wracking and scary because you're handing over this thing that
but
you
were like, edit it.
Please tell me
Yes.
And so it was just like the rest that I had in that process.
And it's just a constant laying it down and giving it to the Lord. Whether it was writing or parenting or work stuff or community stuff, like it was just a constant reminder to lay it down to the Lord.
Yeah.
Really cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so.
Well,
launches today. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Moody, anywhere you buy books online.
Cool.
And please share it.
Mother's Day. When is Mother's Day?
It's in May. I don't know the date, but
so you got plenty of time.
Please share it if you feel led,
and pray for it. Pray for the book. And,
absolutely.
And the moms that are going to be reading it.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
I'm excited. I think I'm more excited than you are.
For sure. Everyone's more excited than I am.
Yes. Yes, you got to lay that down.
I'm trying. Yeah, that'll be book 2.
Yeah. How to be excited. You're still a good writer. That's what it'll be.
You're still a good person.
Very niche. Very niche market there.
Well, thanks for coming. And also, I just want to say thank you for supporting me in every single part of this, because honestly, you're a large reason that I kept writing, because you believed in me way before I thought this could be a thing and encouraged me. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the chapters were me being like, this was my struggle and this was Andrew's wisdom.
No.
But seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
You have to say.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners. We'll see you next time on Saltworks.
This is my story. This is your story.